Now before I start this video, I just want to go ahead and say that this was all possible because of me and many of the other like-minded fans of this series and slice of life anime in general, working together to make this analysis possible. I will be linking any sort of social media they have at the end of the video, so if you don't mind, check them out afterwards. As well as that, I will also be linking my Discord server in the description of the video, so be welcome to join that if you want to. And now on to the video. Kyoto animation. Just about every weeb and their mother at this point who has even heard of the word anime has heard of the legendary Kyoto animation. They are extremely well known for making some of the greatest and well animated thought-provoking series that we have seen within these last 2 decades. And while most of their anime they have adapted or made on their own can be pretty batshit insane, they have been known to work on ones that are still weird and unexplainable, but in quite a different way. The more relaxed, calm kind, the more cute and bubbly kind. And when it comes to these specific qualities, there's no other anime that represents them better than the one that we're going to be talking about today. Long ago in the year of 2008, before there was a Dragon Maid, before there was a Chunibyo, and even before the creation of a Clannad, there was a light among the craziness. A 4-leaf clover derived from a 4-panel comic, among all the other slice of life that were around during the time. A lifetime ago now, there was a lucky star.
ここで夢を見よう明日のことは忘れてさ近い未来超えてゆこう二人の影が沈むオレンジになぜか泣きそうになるけど混ざる黄昏が今溶けた
Now let me guess, if you aren't a fan of this kind of anime the first place and I can already hear the comments, you already know the stereotypes that come with being into this kind of genre of anime already. There is no plot to this, the characters are bland, the show has no direction, yada yada. I'm off to go watch the 167th pointless theory video on JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, yada yada, you get what I mean. But in this video today, we are going to be going over 2 main points. Those being, why after so many years of Lucky Star's finale, it's still one of the most respected and remembered anime of its time, as well as explaining in as much detail as possible what slice of life and moe anime are, why people find them so appealing, and why they could be so much more than just what's shown to you on the front cover on the fucking mouse section. And to do that, I'm going to be using Lucky Star, as one, I love the series, but as it's also a perfect example of an anime that some people just aren't really able to enjoy unless you know what it's trying to be and what it's trying not to be. So, without further ado, I'll hand the mic over to Totoroom. He will be explaining what the anime is about, you know, for that little important thing we call context.
What exactly is the anime about?
Hi, I'm Mr. Context, and you're watching the History Channel. On December 10th, 2003, Lucky Star began serialization in Kadokawa Shoten's Comptique magazine. It's a 4-koma manga, which means it consists of short one-off stories taking place within 4 panels. Every strip follows a group of 4 high school girls as they do nothing you don't already do yourself. Go to school or work, procrastinate their responsibilities, shoot the shit with friends. It's as easy to understand as it gets, allowing it to endear itself to anybody up for some good old-fashioned relaxing escapism. It also heavily references the otaku culture of the time, which almost makes it a period piece for the mid-2000s. This adds an extra layer of enjoyment for demographic A, those who were there, and demographic B, those who are interested in the kinds of things people were saying about anime and manga back then. That's me, by the way. Demographic B for life. Screw those geezers who were older than 4 in 2005. Anyways, this pleasant romp through the daily life of yesteryear was brought to us by Kagami Yoshimizu. Not too much is known about him, other than the fact that during a signing trip in Taiwan, another guy proposed to him twice. Unfortunately, things didn't work out. And in Volume 6 of Lucky Star, Yoshimizu apologized, saying that he only dates girls, this is real life. Speaking of girls, meet our 4 protagonists. Kanata Izumi is our main character, a blue-haired otaku who can't stop talking about Code Geass and Monster Hunter. It is for that reason she is one of my favorite characters. Her interactions with her friends typically bring out her mischievous side, and her attitude towards school reflects her crippling laziness. In the anime produced by Kyoto Animation in 2007, she's voiced by Aya Hirano in Japanese and Wendy Lee in English. Both of these voice actresses have the great distinction of voicing Haruhi Suzumiya from The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, another KyoAni show that aired its first season a year before Lucky Star. Coincidentally, Kanata is a big fan, and there are a lot of clever jokes that play on them sharing a voice actress. I'd highly recommend going into the anime after you've watched Haruhi for this reason: they reference it all the time, something that often comes to the annoyance of Kagami Hiragi, the straight man to Konata's antics and a star student. Her no-nonsense personality and tsundere-like tendencies bounce off of Miss Sarcasm here perfectly, creating by far my favorite dynamic in the show. Hey, this is me from the future, I forgot about Lucky Channel, so second favorite dynamic. She was voiced by Amiri Kato in Japanese, and Kari Walgren in English. Her sister, Tsukasa Hiragi, serves as her polar opposite. Aloof, meek, and hopelessly naive, she rounds out the cast by being the pushover of the bunch. Not to suggest that she's not entertaining, far from it. I think her appeal comes from the sweet rose-colored lens that she views the world through. It's kinda like running into an adult who still believes in Santa Claus. Not the brightest bulb of the bunch, but you can bet on them being able to lift up your mood every time you talk to them. She was voiced by Kaori Fukuhara in Japanese, and Michelle Ruff in English. Finally, we have Miyuki Takara, the walking encyclopedia. If you learn anything about math, science, or history while engaging with Lucky Star, I guarantee it'll be her fault. Other than that, she's our resident Moe character, exhibiting many of the characteristics associated with the unnervingly endearing female characters of the time. This opens the door for a lot of jokes about industry trends, which are told through the way the rest of the world interacts with her. She was voiced by Aya Endo in Japanese and Karen Strassman in English. Also, while fact-checking my descriptions of these characters with the wiki, I noticed that each character has an alive or dead status on their profiles, and I thought that was really funny. Sorry to spoil it for you guys, but Kagami does not die during the events of Lucky Star. Anyways, there are many other characters in the show, like their teacher, Miss Kuroi, and Konata's cousin, Yui Narumi, but I'm sure you'll become acquainted with them in due time. I've had the microphone for far too long, or at least that's what the threat the higher-ups just emailed me says. So I'm gonna pass things off to our next speaker and go barricade my doors and windows.
What is the show in question trying to be?
So, now that we have the overall basics of what the show is about, there comes another question. What is the show trying to be, if it's trying to be anything at all? Well, before we go into that, we first gotta know about the man behind the scenes who created the manga, as well as the team behind the anime, and its interestingly wacky as fuck backstory. But yeah, before the anime, the man who created the 4-panel Mona Lisa of slice of life that we know and love, Kakami Yoshimizu. Yoshimizu in his earlier years was much like us, of course, being in an animation club in his high school, drawing his friends as anime characters, you know, the norm of what everyone else did. He then went on to start work as a graphic artist and working towards becoming an up-and-coming manga artist. Yeah, that's about it. Honestly, other than this, there isn't much more anybody actually knows about this guy. But the real juicy information comes from the production of the anime. So if you don't mind, then get your Starbucks and crop tops out, because I'm about to spill the tea on some weird-ass controversy surrounding this anime. So around the first 4 episodes of the anime, it was being directed by a man named Yurika Yamamoto. And if you've ever heard of anyone talking about how the first 4 episodes of Lucky Star are the worst, then this man is more than likely the reason for it. And due to performance issues with the show, he was quickly replaced with another guy named Yasuhiro Takimoto, who then went on to finish the show all throughout, which was probably the best bet considering that the last guy was a bit of an annoying person to work with from what I could find out about him, allegedly threatening to quit his job 5 times over his career. He was fired from the 2 studios he worked with, including KyoAni. And pretty recently in 2019, tried to crowdfund a dark fantasy anime called Magical Girls, being inspired by the Kyoto Animation arson attacks to create it. So you could probably see why people thought this guy was just, you know, a little bit controversial. But whatever, back to the main topic at hand. If they had to switch out directors after just 4 episodes in, then what was the anime doing wrong? Or what did he do wrong with it? And what did it do to change itself to become what it is? Or in other words, what did it want to be? Well, and this is just my opinion on what I could find out about its writer. Lucky Star is overall a just simple look into the otaku culture around 2003 to 2007, with its many references to older shows that I don't even know about, Kanata referencing the experience of going to a comic-con, and many other things of that nature, along with just going throughout day-to-day life in that era. But obviously in its first few episodes, Lucky Star ran into a problem that a lot of other manga adapted into anime have. Said problem being that with a story as slow-paced as Lucky Star's is, it was very difficult to keep things in the anime going without becoming too repetitive or boring, because yes, believe it or not, there is a limit on how slow-moving an anime can be before it becomes unbearable, even for me. But trust me, there are a lot of shows out there that do this worse than Lucky Star did. And when it came to this problem, the original story director really didn't do much to fix it. Therefore, Takimoto came in and fixed it up, whether it be by introducing characters much earlier in the anime than they did in the manga, much more creative animation and background scenes, and other things of that nature. So yeah, overall, Lucky Star simply tries best and does well at representing the culture of the early 2000s, and it does it in absolute strides.
Does the anime hold up in the modern day?
How does it hold up today? Well, that's a good question. For many, it may very well not hold up at all. But for fans like me, the fact that it doesn't hold up so well is its greatest strength. See, Lucky Star is a show that's very much a product of its time. You feel like you're being time warped to 2007 whenever you watch this show. The quirkiness of Lucky Star is something that I haven't seen in any other show in recent years. No other show references the studio's previous work as much as Lucky Star does. No other show has the voice actors fooling around in the credit sequences. It's stuff like that that I feel makes it a completely different show from the anime airing today. But back to whether or not it holds up in the modern era. Well, in all technical aspects, it very much does. Despite what some online videos might make you believe, it's actually available in a high definition in a 16:9 aspect ratio. In terms of fidelity, it certainly holds up today. But besides technical details, it holds up mainly due to how different it was to shows at the time. Look at any middle-of-the-road show in the late 2000s. They all have a certain look to them, just as middle-of-the-road shows nowadays have a certain sameness to them. The shows you probably remember from the late 2000s were probably those that had a unique story, art style, or both. And Lucky Star certainly has the art style covered. Its soft and squishy moe art style certainly stands out among anime, not just at the time, but even nowadays. It's certainly a unique look, and one that I personally love watching. It's fun to see how the characters squish up against each other, and just how expressive they can be while still being soft and squishy. As someone who discovered Lucky Star only very recently, I really do think it holds up today. After watching modern anime, it's nice to have a change of pace. It's fun to see an anime like Lucky Star every once in a while. Modern anime certainly have their strong suits, but sometimes you just want to sit back and get comfy. And Lucky Star is perfect for that. It doesn't have a long, complicated story you have to remember in order to follow along. Its lighthearted tone means that you won't ever feel worse after watching it. It also isn't so gorgeous that you can't look away for fear of missing a beautiful scene. It's a show that doesn't demand your full attention, which is what makes it so much more fun to watch. Despite it not demanding your full attention, there's still tons of little details and fun references for those who choose to watch. In a vacuum, compared to the shows airing today, Lucky Star's core strength lies in how old it is. While I feel that we're going through a kind of renaissance with quirky, weird anime, Lucky Star's quirkiness is different from the anime airing today. Nowadays, the quirkiness comes from an idea that's outside the standard deviation of what's considered normal. But Lucky Star is a very normal anime at its base, but with some quirky flair added on top. No other show has a cast of characters messing around in the credits. No other show has so many pop culture references, and no other show has the same laid-back attitude of 2007. But I'll save that part for later. I'll see you guys in a bit to discuss the moe aspect of Lucky Star.
And now, what your favorite Lucky Star ship says about you. You've gotten into at least one heated internet argument over whether or not this ship is canon. You're just here for some beautiful cinnamon rolls. Too good for this world. Too pure. If you were a brony, your favorite ship was Flutterpie. You are a firm believer in the inherent eroticism of being stupid together. You are a firm believer in the inherent eroticism of putting up with Konata's BS. You think Ouran High School Host Club would have been a lot better if the genders were switched. You just wanted good things for Yutaka. And really, who wouldn't? You would have shipped Konakaga, but you prefer your ships with just a little bit less hostility. This is just the same joke as Kanata and Tsukasa, except you're also a sucker for girls with short hair. You're always a sucker for girls with glasses. You really liked the helpful fox Senko-san. You're just here for some NTR. You're just here for some men getting pegged. This is just the same joke as Konata and Miyuki, except you also actually care about Ayano. At least someone does. You just want a Japanese girlfriend. Your ideal date involves you and your gamer GF doing a raid in an MMORPG. You are a firm believer in the inherent eroticism of Minoru getting dunked on. You are unreasonably horny for a show whose main characters look like they're 12.
大丈夫だよお姉ちゃん。私口固
The fandom's undying love for the anime.
So now that we're in the know in terms of what the anime is about, what it's trying to be, and how well off it is in 2022, you may also be asking yourself, well, where is the evidence that this anime is a second coming of Christ that you depicted as being, Kona? Because I have never even heard of this slice of life anime before. After all, the best way to truly understand a show's popularity is to look at the content regular viewers of said show post about it, whether that be AMVs, parodies, reviews, and the like. Well, as it turns out, that's actually a very reasonable question to ask, and that's more or less because a large portion of the fandom content that you could find for this show is hidden among the millions of other forms of media, being absolutely stacked on top of it over the years. Which is pretty understandable considering that this show predates a lot of viewers that are watching this video right now. But it only takes a little bit of knowledge and know-how of where to look for it. Typing in Lucky Star into the YouTube search bar and clicking this little icon you may not know about, and then clicking view count, and here you will witness the effort put in by all the people who enjoy this show. English versions of the songs, Rickroll versions of the intro song, and some of the most heavily edited and spliced work for fan animations that I have ever seen. I mean, look at this. Somebody remade the entire intro to the Miyakawa Furume Suzumiya, replacing the main characters with the girls from Lucky Star, and this shit looks great. And this was made 13 years ago. Somebody spent months making this masterpiece for a seemingly unimportant slice of life. Of course, there are some goofy ones out there as well. If you are aware of this old gem of a parody video, then you are a veteran of the community in general. But fan content for this anime is of course not only limited to what you can find on YouTube. You have countless fan arts of our characters, the Rule 34 fan art of course, which I don't really care much for, but you know it exists. There are many fan groups throughout the internet, which is also where I went to get other guys helping me out with a video. And there's even the entire collection of OVAs that are being fan-dubbed by a small team and put out there for all to see. Well, Kona, all that content's still pretty damn old though, with most of what you're talking about being like a decade old. If the show has so much staying power, then where's all the love for the show these days? Dragon Ball is older than that show, and it's still talked about by pretty much every— Shh, be quiet. Now if what you're saying is the case, then what is the video that you're watching right now? Exactly. A video that proves to the uneducated minds, the sheep, that this show is still getting the attention it very well deserves. Yes, even to this day, there are still many examples of Lucky Star being praised in one form or another. Hell, just the other day I found a video of some friends dubbing over the first episode of Lucky Star, and it was pretty funny.
Bruh, your mama.
Wholesome fan art, the super well made Lucky Star YouTube poop, and much more. And I myself, along with other possible newcomers to this slice of life content, am one of the reasons why the show is still being talked about to this day. Just to put into perspective, I've only really been watching anime for around 4 years now I'd say, and I didn't find out about Lucky Star until just 2 years ago, when I stumbled upon another anime also made by KyoAni, that being Love Chunibyo and Other Delusions. I really liked the show and I wanted to see what other anime they worked on, thus leading me to watching all the Lucky Star content that there was to see. And to this day, Lucky Star is still a pretty big part of my internet identity, with me using Kanata PNGs in pretty much every video that I've made on this channel so far, and the fact that my YouTube name is literally the name that the main character uses in her MMO game. Well, now that we know that there's still a decent sized following for the show, what exactly is it that people like about Lucky Star? Well, as I said at the beginning of the video, a lot of the love from the show comes from nostalgia. But the other big part of it is what I like to call the Moe Factor. Now to the non-Japanese animation fan, you may be saying to yourself, what in the absolute hell is a Moe? Did somebody try to spell Moe forget the L? Well, first of all, if you manage to find this video about a Moe anime and don't know what Moe is, then you are the one catching all the hells, my friend. But second, for that explanation, I will let you get back to It's a Gojo, so that he may explain the Moe Factor, and why it contributes such a big part to why people are still so connected to this show.
On the topic of Moe and what it means for the show.
For this section, I'm going to start by asking you what you think Moe means. Just get that definition in your head. I'll give you a second. You got it? Alright. I'm willing to bet that for the majority of you, you use words like cute, clumsy, and sweet. And I'm also willing to bet that most of you also thought of a few characters that you believe represent the concept of Moe. If so, then your definition of Moe isn't wrong. However, here's the definition of Moe that I'll be using throughout this video, just for some clarification on what this part of the video will be about. So, in essence, Moe is an urge to protect a character in a show. The feeling that the 2D PNG image on screen is worth protecting and keeping safe. Though, when I say that, I'm not talking about the people who get up in arms when someone criticizes their waifu. Those people are just crazy. No, what I'm actually talking about is a harmless feeling of seeing a character in a show you like and wanting them to stay the same. Moe often doesn't have any storytelling or character development, and that's on purpose. It wouldn't be Moe if Tsukasa grew up and lost her innocence. The point of Moe is to have the characters' personalities be unchanging. This also ties into the fact that Moe characters are often young. Their unchanging personalities also apply to their age. Having the characters be static in every way is absolutely intentional. Now that begs the question, how do you have a story with static characters? And the answer in this case is to make them a little quirky. And I know that word has a bad rep to it, but when I say quirky, I'm not talking about the need to feel special. I mean that the characters act slightly outside the standard deviation of normal when presented with a given situation. These girls aren't the Joker level of strange, but they're also not the generic anime protagonists of predictable either. With the definition of Moe cleared up, let's talk about how it applies to Lucky Star. With half of the main cast of characters being classified as Moe, it helps explain a lot in the show. Since Moe characters don't grow up, nor grow old, it explains why the story of Lucky Star is non-existent. Tsukasa will never graduate from high school, not because she's dumb, but because there's no part of the story where she grows old enough to graduate from high school. Miyuki will never become a doctor, not because she can't get accepted into medical school, but because the end of the story is intentionally cut out. The only reason that Yutaka is short is because the writers want to keep her static, and not having her grow tall is one way to accomplish that. The point of Lucky Star is to be Moe, even if all the characters aren't Moe themselves. But since half the main cast is Moe, the story has to go at their own pace. So for those of you who are disappointed in Lucky Star's story, this is why. The story cannot progress, as that requires the characters to change in some way. Either by getting older, getting wiser, or by going through difficult situations. Because Moe is designed around unchanging characters, the story in Lucky Star will never advance too far. Besides that, Lucky Star nails the other characteristics of Moe. Cuteness, check. Clumsiness, check. Quirkiness, check. Let's go quickly through all of these points. Cuteness. Lucky Star characters are a sort of mix between normal anime proportions and chibi proportions. They have normal sized bodies, but large heads. Most of their faces' real estate is taken up by their eyes, and their mouths are purposely small to fit with the cute art style. Every Moe character in the show also has a high-pitched voice, which can be annoying to some, but is all intentional. Onto clumsiness, and this one is pretty evident after you've watched a few episodes. The clumsiness of some of these characters is comical. There's no way a real person could ever actually act like this, but it's one of the ways to get Moe characters to actually do something. Lastly, quirkiness. Let's face it, some of the characters in Lucky Star are pretty strange. Instead of a deep, complicated story, Lucky Star has character drama play out for most of the runtime. This helps keep the Moe characters Moe while still giving them something to do on screen. And I think that's a good place to leave it. I'll be back later in the video to talk about early thousands nostalgia, but until then I'll leave you with Beams Trigger and Dolly to talk a little bit more in depth about the lack of story.
The lack of a story, and is one needed to be enjoyable.
At its core, Lucky Star is a show in which four girls just have simple, lighthearted conversations about their hobbies. It's a show that prides itself on humor and otaku culture first, and the characters as a secondary point of focus, and it does this wonderfully. On rare occasions, the show will dive deeper into how the characters feel, such as when Kagami makes dinner with her older sister, or when Kanata asks her father about her late mother. The Yonder here is a perfect episode, a show about nothing being able to make the audience feel something other than humor for a change, and it's a pleasant surprise. It's a touching moment between Kanata and her father as he remembers his life with his late wife Kanata. Despite being a more serious topic, there's still comedy sprinkled in that conversation, something that it isn't easy to do, but it comes off as very natural as Kanata and her father act the way they always do, with the end of that segment having a funny moment with Kanata's ghost. Despite this, there isn't much story progression. Kanata learning about her mom didn't change her at all like it would to a character in a more serious show. Life isn't like the movies or TV. Kanata is still who she is, and its relatability can't be so easily overlooked. A series about nothing ends up being more relatable than any other.
Something that makes Lucky Star pretty unique when you compare it to other animes is its lack of an overarching story. Instead, the show has its episodes consist of multiple shorts taking inspiration from the manga's 4-panel comic strip format. While some people say that the reason they couldn't get into Lucky Star was the aforementioned lack of a story and that it's just a show about anime references that only those in the know would understand, this lack of a story is the reason the Lucky Star fandom likes the series so much. Another reason for Lucky Star's lack of a story is the fact that it's a slice of life anime, just like another series that was adapted by Kyoto Animation's K-On! Just like Lucky Star, K-On! Has its characters doing mundane everyday things, with the only differences between the two being the fact that K-On! Has a plot that revolves around the K-Ons and the Light Music Club, and the fact that K-On! Got a second season.
The interesting spin-off of Lucky Star.
Just to take a little break from the main points of the video, let's move on to something that's still related to Lucky Star, but at the same time is the exact opposite of Lucky Star. Deep within the darkest abyss of Lucky Star's history, there is a no bullshit spin-off called the Miyakawa Family's Hunger. I'd say the original name for it, but I don't want to be torched for getting it wrong, so I'll just leave it at that. Now this spin-off itself is pretty interesting on its own, considering it's actually not really that well known, but is in fact not even made by Kyoto Animation, being made by Encourage Films and Ordet being one of the other companies this guy was fired from along with Kyoto Animations. But unlike his performance with Lucky Star, he actually managed to make it through the production of this spin-off, so good job guy. So not sure if they just sold the idea to another company, but it is what it is. And my lord, is this anime something special. The Miyakawa Family's Hunger features two girls, Hikagi, I can't Japanese, and Hinata. Hikagi being the younger sister and Hinata being the older sister, who is also just pretty much a copy of Miyuki with slightly pinker hair. Now since this is a spin-off of Lucky Star, it has to be at least somewhat related to it in some sort of way, doesn't it? These are just two sisters hanging out and enjoying their lives, doing what they be doing back in 2007, listening to This Is Sparta memes or Numa Numa. Well, if you take a second to remember the title, Miyakawa Family's Hunger. Oh dear. Yep, that's right. These two are much less well off than our Lucky Star cast, because these girls are dirt poor, and a big part of that, aside from having no parental figures in their life, is Hinata. Due to Hinata's otaku lifestyle, she's always whittling down their income, splurging on video games, manga, and things like that, meaning that the both of them barely even have enough money for heating, electricity, and even fucking food, and nobody pays the biggest price for this quite like Hikagi does. I swear to God, I'm not going to pronounce her name right once this entire goddamn recording. Forcing this poor girl to be the more responsible of the two, and refusing to go on field trips since she doesn't have the money, and decides to spend what little money she does have on lottery tickets in a desperate attempt to pull them out of their fucking hole they dug for themselves. Or more like the hole Hinata dug up for them. Hinata up for Sister of the Goddamn Year, if I do say so myself. Now, why I even feature this spin-off in this video is for a pretty good reason. That reason being that this spin-off's entire existence is a perfect perspective into the other side of being an otaku. Because in Lucky Star, you often see our main girl Kanata always going out to buy the newest manga, spending all her free time playing MMOs and games on her console, living a carefree life with her dad being able to support her hobbies. But when you watch this show, it's like a complete fucking opposite to what our main Lucky Star crew goes through, and the much gloomier side of what being an otaku can do to you, as well as the ones around you. Unlike Kanata, who has a steady income income thanks to her family, Hinata is nowhere near as wealthy as she is. Due to that, her little sister has to pay for it. Honestly, Hinata just kinda sounds like a very horrible person if you ask me. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is that this spinoff is a pretty interesting look into the other side of being an otaku and the hardships and trouble that can pop up from it. So at the end of the day, anime figures and low income jobs do not mix well. So yeah, thanks for coming to my TED Talk, and now back onto the next part of the video.
Early 2000 nostalgia and its many references.
Do you remember what happened in 2007? Chances are you probably remember certain key events like the first iPhone being launched, but that's not the only thing that happened in 2007. In 2007, you were probably buying extra Wiimotes so you can play some Wii with your friends. You were also probably trying to torrent a 240p fan-subbed episode of your favorite anime at 1 megabyte per second on your desktop tower PC. And I'm willing to guess that one of those anime you were torrenting was Lucky Star because of how ubiquitous it was back in the day. And I believe that one of the reasons why it was so ubiquitous was because of how many references there are in Lucky Star. There's references to Haruhi, Initial D, Gade, Mirai Nikki, Fate, Gundam, Fullmetal Alchemist, Street Fighter, Fullmetal Panic, Detective Conan, Dragon Quest, Hatsune Miku, Nintendo, Sony, Shin-Chan, Comtech, Monster Hunter, Air, Final Fantasy, McDonald's, Code Geass, and so many more. Despite the references to pop culture, the entire show really does like to show off just how early thousands it is. All the TVs are huge and bulky, Kanata's monitor is 4x3, and they all use flip phones. It's really incredible just how different a world 2007 seems to us just 15 years onward. Aside from the technology, one thing this show has that really makes it feel like a blast from the past is its attitude. You can see it everywhere, but especially in the unique ending credit sequences in the second half. There, you can see staff members just having fun and fooling around on camera. It's basically just Shiraishi Minoru doing random things and singing while other staff members just kinda mess around in the back. It has such a childish experimentation to it all. The staff at Kyoto Animation were probably wondering how they could fill all the credit sequences in the second half. The sequences in the first half were just the characters singing popular songs against a static image that zoomed out a bit. So I feel that they wanted the second half's credits to really stand out and be engaging. And to this day, it's the most hilarious credit sequence I've ever seen. Shiraishi sings songs, sure, but it's all live action with video editing that's very reminiscent of 2007. Text flies across the screen, the colors and resolution of the camera look about right for the time, and the special effects were on point for that time period. These sequences reflect what comedy was like quite well back then. You have a character be placed in the real world, put them in an absurd situation, and then have them fool around and push the limits of your situation until you're done. It has such a youthful curiosity to it all. Seeing how they can push the envelope and make their audience laugh, or see what crazy situation they can put Shiraishi through. All of that mixed in with the 2007 look and feel of the camera makes it an iconic moment in the series. It's kind of like how you probably experimented with the games you played when you were a kid, like seeing how to beat a Mario or Sonic level. Or maybe even experimenting in Bad Piggies or Minecraft if you're really young. Going to school and seeing what new cheat codes or secret levels your friends found. It's that youthful experimentation and curiosity that makes Lucky Star so different from shows nowadays. The staff members sound like they're having a blast behind the scenes. I can only imagine what it was like on the road trip where they filmed all these Shiraishi Minoru credit sequences. With all of that being said, it's time to finally end this deep dive into Lucky Star. I'll pass the mic over to Kona one last time so he can see you out. Take care, everyone.
Overall conclusions for the analysis.
Hey yo people, it's Kona again. I just wanted to add a little something to think about before this segment ended. Something that I think pertains to the power or importance of nostalgia. You see, most of everybody else who has been in this video, or at least most people, grew up during a time when Lucky Star was in its prime. A time before the internet was anything as big as it is today. A time when flip phones dominated the market and YouTube was barely even a fucking thing back then. Even though I was around when the show came out, I wasn't nearly old enough to enjoy the community centered around this anime or the anime community in general. But from what I have learned from interacting with the people who have seen Lucky Star back then and all their great memories, it really made me start thinking about what I would end up looking back on in 10 years or more into the future. At the time of making this video, I'm currently 21, so you know, haven't been really around that long. And therefore I grew up with much more recent media, that being mostly shows like Bakugan on Cartoon Network, and in terms of anime, one of my first ever ones was Love, Chunibyo and Other Delusions. But sometimes, at least for me, I feel like 2012 was only a few years ago. I remember sharing memes with my friends at school or watching Polar Express in my Boy Scout unit. Yes, I was in that shit. Make fun of me in the comments. Yet that was pretty much a entire fucking decade ago. Yeah, time sure really does fly, doesn't it? A lot of people will say that you never want to look too far into the past, as it's easily able to distract you from what's going on in your life at this current time. But in another sense, looking back on things that you enjoyed way back when is an almost blissful way of reminding you that no matter what's going on in your life at that moment, if a piece of media that you're familiar with was just so important to you that you would never be able to forget it, there will always be people around you as well that can share these experiences with you. People who will be able to stand alongside you and say, yeah, I remember those times. Those are some pretty damn good times. I can't exactly explain my current life situations for multiple reasons, but what I can say is that these past few years have been the most hectic and life-changing moments in my life. And it's been going by so fast I feel like I haven't really been able to really look back on when times were simpler and more fun for me. Moments that I could look back to when things got hard or confusing. And that's why nostalgia and having favorite memories is so important, at least to me personally. To slow down and remind yourself that there are people possibly in messed up situations that you're also in and being able to relate to them. People who have a shared connection to better times shared along with the memories of the media that they enjoyed. So in a way, I guess you could say that this video was less about Lucky Star specifically, and more about how shows like Lucky Star are so important to people's past. Honestly, I could have talked about any show. I could have talked about Kanata or Chunibyo or even Bakugan, but I chose to talk about Lucky Star because I love the history, the community, and everything about it. So even if shows, games, or anything these days don't seem like much in the moment, in the future they will end up being your best connection to the best moments of your life, possibly shared with thousands of other people. Today's anime like A Silent Voice, Bocchi the Rock, or Attack on Titan may just be our generation's favorite shows to look back on, just like how Lucky Star was for the last. Yep, that's about the end of the video then. I know this video was a bit longer than most ones, but I'm very happy that I was able to make it and get it out for everyone to see. I also want to give a big thanks again to everyone that helped me make this video. I definitely wouldn't have been able to make it without everyone's help. I probably would have stroked out and died like 20 minutes in. So if you're interested in anything that they make, then I'll leave any sort of social media they have in the description of the video. I'm going to be taking a pretty big break from YouTube after this one, but in a few months I should be making a Lucky Star Iceberg video, as well as a few other reviews for shows I've been wanting to talk about, so stay tuned for that if you want to see that stuff. This has been Kanata, and I will see you later or fucking whenever.